Hey everybody, welcome to Sew with Joe. Today we're picking up where we left off last time, and we're patching up a pair of my 20 plus year old jeans. Last time we did a little patch beside my zipper. Buddy's at Scamskate. Today we will be patching a hole beside my back pocket. So, a hole in case you can't see it. Right there. And I'm going to use actually one of my own patches this time. Stopping doesn't get you anywhere patch. And I'm actually going to go over top of part of my Black Label Society patch here to make this work. And I'm not the biggest fan of Black Label Society anymore. I still like the music, but they came through and they were playing a tour, and it was supposed to be like an evening with Zach Wild kind of thing, not necessarily a Black Label Society whatever. And it was sad. He played pretty much the same riff all evening. And it was basically like, yay! Yay! And that was the entire show. So, it's one thing when I find out that a band isn't good live, or comes to town and puts on a show like that. When something like that happens, I'm not a fan anymore. Just can't do it. So yeah, Black Label Society has some good music. Well, I don't know if I'd say good. Has some rockin' tunes. But yeah, that was just a really disappointing performance. Did not meet any of my expectations for that show. In case you haven't seen this patch before, it's one that I've come up with myself. I discussed it in a previous episode where that whole thing came from. That is a bent needle. It was like that when I got here. Well, it was, actually. Just going through so many layers of material. And every once in a while, a layer of skin. Yeah, pinning this heavy stuff can be difficult. If you have a technique for doing this, like if you can like slide it in just along the edge or something and it stays, let me know. I have a funny feeling I'm doing this the hard way. Alright, I'm going to start at the top and I'll finish there because that's not lined up with where I wanted it. So you start at the top, working some white thread, do my usual blanket stitch with my long couch needle. I like using the couch needle because I can grab it. And with the little needles, it's always like just grabbing hardly anything. Okay, start at this corner, work our way around. Get that first stitch in. In. Sippy cup today. Mouth gets very dry when I'm talking. So, positive world news for today. Interesting new technology. New technology that is 90% water. And what they call them gel cooling cubes or jelly ice cubes. Gel cooling cubes and jelly ice cubes. Same thing, different name. Different descriptor, more appropriately. So it's basically a gel that is stable enough to hold over 20 pounds on it. I think it's per square inch, was it? I think. Here's my coffee. These gel cooling cubes, they are reusable. I say up to 12 times. And then I think it's something like in movie X-Men, where this senator is mutating, but his mutation is unstable, and he's turning into like some sort of a water mutant, and eventually he just becomes more and more and more water, and then kind of turns into a jelly, and then is just water and is gone. That's what I picture. So they're, like I mentioned, 90% water, and the neat thing is they change color depending on how cold they are. If they're not cold, they're a light green, and when they are cold, they're more of an opaque, like just an off-whitish green kind of thing. So you can tell if they need to be refrozen just by looking at them. Now, a big benefit for this, of course, is it would reduce water consumption. If you think about any place that handles food, handles meat or fish, and fish, in the fish industry is where the idea was originally intended for. So, you know, the obvious benefit of reducing your water consumption on a business level, which in some places is very key. You can cut these cubes to any shape that you want. You can make like thin sheets of it. Like if you want for in your cooler, just put a sheet of jelly, cooling gel, all the way along the bottom of your cooler, and just put everything on top of it. Really neat thing is that when they have reached their end of life, after their 12 uses, and they start to turn into a mutant governor that's melting, then you can put them into your gardens and use them as compost, because they do break down, and it's just gelatin basically. And so environmentally friendly. I think I've gone and left my thread too short again. Need to tie a knot. Need to tie a knot, and I may not be able to tie a knot. May or may not. Oh, where was that from? Jack's Nightmare Before Christmas. May or may not. I don't know if you remember him. The literally two-faced mayor. I always thought that was an interesting character, or entertaining character, anyways. Now, a couple things that I hadn't thought of that this would benefit. Is that they're antimicrobial, so they won't mold, which is super important in food handling industry. And that was the one thing that actually inspired the design. Another thing that inspired the design was the amount of mold on plastic freezer packs, like ice packs. So you take these freezer packs and you put them in your kids' or your own lunch every day, and it sits there, it gets wet, and it molds, and then you have mold in your food source, and that's potentially very unhealthy. So, and for reusing them, all you do is you rinse them off with water, and it washes off any thing that may have rested on the gelatin. Being antimicrobial, they don't absorb. And if anything does stay on them, it doesn't react with it. And the main thing that I hadn't thought of where this would be a benefit is in handling fish. Handling any food that comes from the water. Because you have a lot of people with allergies. And if your fish market has a bunch of ice in it, and that ice is melting, and that melt water is running into other food sources, it can cause all sorts of problems for people with allergies. Also just cross-contamination of flavors. And if all of a sudden one batch of fish comes in that has some sort of microbe or anything that would be spread through water, it would stop that spread. And also not just for cross-contamination, but for the meltwater draining off and going into the sewer system. You wouldn't have that anymore. So everything that comes out of these factories usually would not happen anymore. You wouldn't have all that drain water that has to be collected and processed or dumped or whatever that place happens to do with their water. You wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. You'd just have to worry about disposing of these cubes. And if they're compostable, you can make a deal with some soil company or something that you'd sell them your cubes, they'd mix it in with their soil as part of the compost, and there you go. Or whatever kind of deal they would work out. Here's I know it might not seem like all that big a deal, you know, it's ice. Just think of how much ice is used. And to make that ice, you need water and power. Some companies can reduce their water usage and power cost, or cost of just buying ice and having all the issues with meltwater and cross-contamination and mold and bacteria and all this, or they can purchase these gel cubes and not have to worry about it. Every once in a while things are said in my head the way someone else says it, and there's this channel called Frank. He always throws an interesting spin on things, so it'd be cubes. I did that very badly. Yeah, the cubes. Yeah, I can't do it. If you want to check it out, Frank, internet or YouTube channel. Really funny. He's got millions of subscribers. One more subject of good world news, and unfortunately I have to get going. I actually have something to do today. So out of the city of Bristol in the UK, they are doing an e-waste upcycle program, is basically what it is. Company is called the Bristol Waste Company and Eco Surety. And what they do is they go around collecting unwanted or broken electronic items. The examples they gave were lamps, keyboards, slow cookers. So anything that people would upgrade and then get rid of just because they come around and collect them, and then they test everything. They fix anything that they can, and they make sure it's safe to use, and then they give them away to those in need, those less fortunate, those who can't afford to go out and upgrade everything in their home twice a year because it's the style. So I think that's great because it's showing the value of old electronics. You know, even if you can't use it, there's somebody out there that can and would appreciate it. So, you know, rather than just throwing things away like a lot of people do, think about your neighbor, you know. And at the absolute very least, instead of just throwing it out, bring it to a thrift store. Those are usually good causes. But in this case, they are handed out, I think for free, or either free or at a very low cost. Forget that part of the article. And this helps keep e-waste out of the waste streams, and to me that's the biggest advantage of it. Because e-waste is very toxic. It's all plastic and chemicals. You know, inside all these electrical components are all sorts of chemicals, and they will mess up the environment if they can leach into the ground. So as much as we can reuse and recycle out of old electronics, I think it's very worthwhile. So, do I think that gel cooling cubes and upcycling e-waste will change the world? A bit at a time. Just like everything else. I was just talking with my wife yesterday and discussing some of these topics, and you know, these were all things that I look back, or I saw when I was younger, you know, 20 years ago or whatever, that, you know, all these things were issues. You know, the barrier reef was dead, the River Thames was dead. You know, humpback whales were on rapid decline. And you know, I had a very negative view of the world, or I should say the world's chances of surviving. And looking back on that and seeing all these new developments and these the news stories that I've been talking about, and reading all these things where all of that's being reversed. You know, the Great Barrier Reef spawning again, and the River Thames with over 100 species of fish in it now. It's just incredibly positive, encouraging world news. And you know, maybe takes away a little bit of the dread of the world. Because back when I was young, recycling was just starting to be a thing. Like, no one recycled, and the schools were pushing it. And yeah, I was a pretty big advocate for recycling. I've gotten a little complacent over the years. I just kind of throw everything in the recycle bin, which I'm going to stop doing because a lot of things I put in there probably can't be recycled, and all that does is make more work for the people at the recycling stations or depots, whatever. Okay, time is flying right on by. So I think I'm going to pause here and yeah, start getting things ready for my day. It's going to be a fun one. So, thanks very much for joining me. What we did today: placed, pinned, and sewed the top part of a stopping doesn't get you anywhere patch. That's the inside view. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining me. I do appreciate the time we get to spend together. And yeah, until next time, keep on chilling. Don't forget your cookie. Peace.